Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you make me deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk loud.
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor. Bringing you today's interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Survivor Oz for our recap with our past contestants. And that's right, we're back on doing this again. We had a couple of weeks off, but things are going smoothly now. We're getting people lined up, and we're very happy to have on another returning contestant, somebody who was so good the first time around. We had to have him back on by the end of the season. And if you listened to the recap last week with Diane Ogden, you know about my love for Africa, my all-time favorite season, and I was super disappointed that I couldn't do the first recap with this contestant earlier this season, but I am so thrilled to have her back on. Now, we are joined by T-Bird. Teresa Cooper, you're back on Survivor Oz.
Yes, I am. I'm glad to be here, Colin. Thanks for having me. Survivor Oz, you guys are just my favorites, and I love talking to you anytime I get a chance.
And I guarantee, just like with Diane last week, I'm going to find a way to fit in some Africa questions, some Africa comparisons, because I'm all about Africa. Still to this day, my all-time favorite season.
Yeah, you know, Africa has a special place in my heart, too. So anytime you want to throw Africa question in, I am ready for you.
All right. Well, we should also talk about the current season, I guess, because we're up now to episode 8. You know that if you're downloading this and you see the episode 8 in the title. So episode 8 of Kaoh, Rong, you were on earlier this season, but so much has changed. This is one of these seasons, just every week it's like a completely different show. So from the last point you were on, I think it was episode 3 until now, has anything changed with your opinions, or how are you enjoying the season at this point?
Colin, I'm loving the season. I said early on, well, actually I said it before the season started, for this cast to come off of the Second Chances cast, which I thought was a fantastic cast. I thought this is going to be hard for them to pull this one off. I mean, how do you follow behind Second Chances? They did. The cast is absolutely phenomenal. I love them. And now into episode 8, which I guess I think we're at day 19 with 10 players left. Now, you know, when I did the show earlier with y'all in the season, you don't really know much about the characters yet with only 3 shows in, 3 episodes in. But now all these characters have come to life. And what I thought from the first day is a lot different than what I thought, what I think now. And I guess the first thing I probably would mention is some of the crazy wild characters were right there when we saw the first show. You know, we loved Ty right off the bat. I loved Ty right off the bat. I loved Debbie right off the bat. The characters that I didn't see that to me are quite colorful and I love is Aubrey, for example. The last few episodes, she has really, really blossomed and bloomed, and not that she wasn't that way all along. I just didn't see it. Mm-hmm. And I'm really crazy about her, also still crazy about Ty and Debbie. But now Aubrey's on my love list.
It's such an unusual season. Like you said, you don't really get to know all the characters right away. And this year, we've seen changes. I mean, it feels like every single week we're talking about the same subject on these recaps. But every single week, we're getting these characters just completely turning around. You know, Debbie was kind of crazy in the beginning, which I thought was fantastic. And then she seemed like she was this mastermind. And then everything turned around, last week. And it's almost like we're seeing a different character. That's exactly how this episode started, I think, with Jason. So I have to get your opinion on Jason. Like, I don't know how you were feeling about him early in the season, but we've had this weird portrayal of him as being this very arrogant, condescending guy, and then suddenly out of nowhere we have this scene where he's talking about his daughter and everything. How are your feelings about Jason going into this episode, and did this scene change your opinion at all of him?
I love seeing the dad part of him come out. I mean, but no, it didn't. It didn't change. It didn't change my mind as far as watching him play. I think I love seeing the emotional side. Even as far as Scott too, I like to see when he was talking about, of course, that his parents had died. He was very young. I think he was 16, which that's young. But as far as, and again, I look at it, Colin, as if I was out there playing with them, and to see the way they treated the other players, to see you saw the self-confidence that Nick had, and that's, to me, the way Scott and Jason have seemed to be the whole time. So this one part that they showed him talking about his two daughters, and of course his daughter was with
the autism.
The autism. Thank you. Autism, which of course is very serious, and it did make him. I think he even said in the confessional that he didn't intend on bringing that out, but if anybody asks him about his daughters, of course he'll absolutely will mention it. It makes him a little human, but it's still, for me, I still see the dominant, the men must take charge and must rule. So it gave me a little human side of him for a minute or two, but I still feel the same as I do about him. I think that if Scott, I think we'd see a lot more of Scott, meaning not quite the bully side of Scott, if he wasn't right there with Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Jason's got the, more the bully type character, whether he would be with Scott or not, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we saw that earlier in the season too, and I think there's such an odd thing happening, I think, in the last couple seasons where I think fans are really taking a lot of things personally with how people are treating others on the show. And I think, we do have to look at it and think, I mean, you've been out there and probably have seen the worst out of some people when they normally wouldn't, act a certain way just because the elements get to them. But it seems like, we talked about this in an earlier episode this week, how Scott just seems to get grouped in too often with Jason or even with Nick and some of this arrogant behavior and everything. But it's exactly like you said. When Scott was separated from Jason, the first thing he did was he buddied up to Ty, and suddenly he was this really warm, friendly guy who seemed to get along with everybody. I mean, Scott seems to just be playing a different game, I think, so I completely agree with you on that.
yeah, and I like Scott. It's exactly, when Scott's not with Jason, I like him. But when he's pulled in there with Jason, and that's funny, it's exactly what happened in Africa when the young crowd got together, those four players got together, then all of a sudden they all became bullies.
Mm-hmm.
But individually, like Lil Kim, you took her away or you took Brandon away, they weren't that. You wouldn't see that. So I guess safety in numbers, Colin. So again, I think Jason is actually the one that's making me pull away from Scott and making me feel really good about the women pulling together right now. So again, I like to see the human side. I love to know about the characters' families, because that's who makes you a lot who you are. But I think Jason, again, the bully that I would have a tough time playing with as far as being dominant and taking over.
Well, I mean, we saw the same scene, I guess the same type of scene that we saw with Jason. Let's let the audience finally warm up to these characters who have been maybe a little bit more villainous up until now. Scott had the same thing. I think there's been a lot of talk about, well, Scott has money, which, I mean, you clearly experienced that, with as you were saying, the young people, like with Lindsay and Silas and Brandon and Kim, the way that they dealt particularly with Carl in Africa. And I remember asking Diane about this last week about, if anything has changed, because we didn't see this for the longest time in Survivor. And now it seems to be coming back, this idea that somebody has money, we don't necessarily want to reward them. Even though you weren't part of that, do you see that this is something that would carry from one season to another, that simply having money might be too much of a strike against you and nobody will ever reward you $1 million if it comes down to the final jury vote?
I don't think so, Colin. I mean, I know it just depends on who they're sitting with. Again, what I think that I would like to think most players do when they're sitting there listening and they're on the jury, they're listening to the 2 or the 3 plead their case. I want whoever represents my season. If it can't be me, I want that person to be the one that played the hardest and the best game. That's what I want to see. So, but I think early on and through the game, when you're looking at voting people out, you're looking at everything, Colin. You're looking at who's the oldest, who's the slackest, who's got the most money. Anything you can do to differentiate one person from you or from anybody else that'll keep you in the game longer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think I heard that mentioned at the very beginning, and then I thought, you hear all kind of different things. Well, maybe this person's too weak, and then later in the game, this person's too strong. We got to get them out. This person has a lot. I just think it's just another reason, to kind of have people look at somebody else other than you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that will hurt Scott if he makes it down to the end. I think if he's sitting there with Jason, who maybe a lot of the people on the jury are going to feel like bullied him, but it's hard to say. If Scott's going to have to start playing his own game, or that could hurt him at the end more than anything, because I think the jury's going to say, well, Scott, you just rode Jason's coattails the whole way. Why should why should we reward you the $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess that's my feeling on that.
Do you, we saw what happened was you put these guys together. You mentioned like Scott and Jason, and obviously pairing up with Nick was just like the worst combination you could think for a social game when there's already this paranoia. You had Debbie on one side, who's been planting the seed of this all-female alliance, and then you have on the other side, Nick and Scott and Jason, who are just so openly doing it, and it really seemed to backfire on them this week. This entire episode really almost seemed to be drawing gender lines. And I don't know what your take is on that, because it's something that I've thought about it only in this past episode, and it's definitely come up over so many seasons. It always seems to be, one or the other. You'll have the women saying, oh, we're going to band together and do an all-women's alliance, or the guys band together, so we're going to do an all-guys alliance. What do you think it is about Survivor where people so often will look at, okay, well, let's get this gender together. Maybe they just feel more comfortable with this one gender, or with their own gender, instead of actually just thinking about, well, let's, play it by our original tribes, or, young versus old, like you saw. What do you think it is where it keeps coming down to these genders going against each other?
Well, I think, and again, we only see what the editor, what they show us after the editing has been done. But it looked like Sydney was the one that pulled in, wait a minute. And I think the reason we saw that was because all of a sudden, she wasn't feeling comfortable with the Beauty and Braun together. Because, they were looking at, let's get the Beauty and Braun together, but then now she's feeling a little uncomfortable and a little bit on the outs because now Nick's being pulled in. And I guess all of a sudden, these are strong characters. All the men are strong characters, and certainly all these women that people may think, they don't want to be pushed around by men. I think you saw that early on, or a few episodes ago, with Nick telling Michelle what to do. Mm-hmm. And Michelle was kind of going with it. But these are strong, tough women that can make their own minds up. And the same thing with Sydney. Sydney, it's all about now, who will you beat? And looking at the big picture, I think is what she said. And she decided she's not going to sit back and be right below the men since they seem to be all bonded. So she thought, hey, might as well pull in all the girls and see what we can do with that. It's just looking at all options and looking at all angles. Sydney has really, really come around. Mm-hmm. And again, I say come around. I'm sure she's been playing great since the beginning, but we only see what they want us to see. But I've been really pleased with how she's come out, and you can definitely see with this last episode at day 19 and day 20 how paranoia certainly has come into play. And I think even Jason mentioned that this is about the time where the paranoia is setting in, and obviously it's is happening with Sydney. And that's why Jason has to pull her over to the side, you know. But like Sydney said, she said, I can blow this whole game up and tell him who's got the idols and this and that. So a little bit of paranoia, obviously. Also very smart that she's looking at other options and other angles and not willing to sit at, you know, 4th or 5th place.
Yeah, to me, Sydney's the most interesting player in the game right now because she has been very patient up until now. I mean, she had many opportunities to go against Scott and Jason early on. And really, we even had the scene when she almost got medevaced where Jason was saying, you know, I'll go with her to the end. There's a real loyalty there. So in a way, I think a lot of people are kind of jumping down Neil and Jason and Scott's throats because, like, they're so openly, you know, making themselves an alliance. Of course, Sydney's going to get paranoid. But at the same time, I feel like Sydney's been so comfortable up until now. I'm not really sure why this did set it off, unless, like you said, the editors are always telling us a story, and they said right at the start of the episode, this episode's about paranoia. Sydney kind of went from this very calm, very patient player to suddenly exploding, and I think it definitely worked in her favor. But do you see that this other persona, I guess she's almost portraying it as, do you see that this is something that could get her in trouble down the road?
Well, you know, I think just from seeing the previews of what's going to be happening next week, yeah, I mean, because I would think that Jason and Scott is, you know, of course, they're going to, you see that they're hiding all the, what are they hiding? They're hiding all the, I guess, stuff as far as, I think they mentioned about not being able to let them eat or, I don't know what they said. But you know, of all the people, you would think when they come back next week, Scott and Jason, who would you go for if all of a sudden everybody's plans changed? Are you going to go for Aubrey and Debbie, who basically thought they were going? You can't blame them for changing it up. No, you're going to go to the ones you thought were the most loyal, which Cindy would be the most loyal because she started off with Scott and Jason. So I believe that Cindy now is going to be in big trouble because she's the one that changed the whole, you know, she changed her vote, so they've got to think, you know, what made her change. She's the one I would think is going to be in a lot of danger for jumping sides.
And maybe we're jumping a bit ahead in the episode here, but we might as well talk about it now while we're on Sydney. The fact is, we're not even just talking about females. Probably hands down the strongest physical competitor if you were to just take what she does in her everyday life and just by looking at her. Strongest physical competitor we've had in so many seasons. She was probably always going to be a target. And then we have the entire immunity challenge was really just two people. So her and Ty, do you think that her performance in that challenge could mark her?
It could now because of what she did by changing her vote and going with a girl's right now, a girls' alliance. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Where before it may not have mattered because Debbie, I think Debbie is extremely strong. And not just mentally, Debbie seems amazingly strong to me too. But Debbie's not going to stand out like Sydney's going to do because Scott and Jason knew that Debbie and Aubrey, you know, were going to vote for somebody in their group. So, yeah, but I definitely think Sydney's in trouble now with them seeing how strong she is and that she just jumped to the other side.
And it really was all Sydney's move. And I mean, through everything, all the episodes we've recorded this week, our power rankings, when we're writing it up, everybody seems to be of the same opinion. I mean, ultimately, even though people like Debbie and Joe were saved by this, and Julia and Michelle were saved by this, and Aubrey, this was 100% Sydney's move. So really it's just going to come down to, is the heat all going to be on her for making this move, and now she's the biggest target? You know, could she put herself in a leadership position, or could she even find a way to flip back? Do you think there's any possibility that Jason and Scott, who are now down in numbers, that they're missing Nick, they need a third person? Do you think they would go back and work with Sydney again?
Oh, they're going to have to. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to try because if they can't get anybody else, they're going to have to go. But they're never going to trust her again. They may pull her in, but they're going to also know they've got to watch their back. Just because she did flip on.
And I mean, even I guess going back to your season, you've kind of experienced this firsthand. You had no issues with potentially working with Brandon to get yourself ahead in the game when you knew, well, this is going to give us the extra numbers, right?
Right, but then you can never trust him.
Mm-hmm.
You always know you've got to keep them right there next to you. You got to use them, to get ahead. But don't ever think you've got them 100% because you don't. You don't. So they got to know that with Sydney now. So it's going to be now. Of course, Julia's kind of the wild card because it looked like they read out 5, 6, 7, 8. They told us 9 of the votes.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't see that 10th vote. Did they show? Who Julia voted for?
Well, I think Julia voted with the girls. I know that Ty voted for Jason as the only person voted for Jason.
Talk about being out of the loop. How did that happen?
Yeah, Jason. Ty's the other one that we really have to talk about this week. We might as well now. We just talked about the immunity challenge. Ty seemed to just be completely out of it this week, and he's such a fun character. And there have been moments where it seems like he's a guy who could really go far in the game, and then we have just mistake after mistake. I mean, he went out of his way to call out the brains and say a brain is going home in the challenge, and then just almost to prove a point, he gives himself the immunity, which surely that's going to put a target on his back. Then he has the whole tribal council thing, which we can get into that now too if you like, where he calls out the whole super idol thing and exposes that, and then he votes opposite from everybody else. It was so confusing to watch Ty this week, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was very confusing. So, and of course, he's going to be probably a target too if Jason figures out who voted for him, because I'm telling you, he's going to be crazy about that. And then, like you said, Ty's very strong. The same thing in the immunity challenge with Sydney. Strong player, very likable. I don't think you want to be sitting at the end with Ty. I can tell you that right now. So it's going to be interesting now watching how all this plays out and who they go after. And you would think, and again, unless there's something we're not seeing, Michelle and Joe look like they can kind of sit back and and hang out and be there for a while without being in danger.
Yeah, I mean, Survivor really, it comes down to that point which we're at right now. Once you hit the merge, two things. One, if you're not a physical threat, you're going to be around longer than the people who are physical threats. And two, if you're not really in the mix, that can actually be a good thing for you. So I think up until now, I've kind of looked at Michelle and even Joe and thought, well, they have no chance of winning. But right now, it's looking like they could have a chance to get to the end because they're an easy person to work with. They haven't burned those bridges.
That's right. And, it's funny. It's like what we talked about. At the beginning of the game, anything that can make you stand out as far as what we talked about. If people think you have money, if you're too old, like, they with Joe's age, and he's in remarkable shape. Anything, Debbie, talking too much. If you stay in the game long enough, all that turns, and you see with Joe, now him being the oldest is not a factor. It's like you said, it's a good thing if you can get deeper into the game because you're not a threat. Like Ty, like Sydney. They're all threats now because, they can hang in, and they're changing and they're switching on Jason and Scott, and that's going to be something they will really put them in the hot seat.
I want to, before we get more into the strategy and how everything unfolded for Nick this episode, we'll talk a little bit about the reward challenge, just because I can't go through a recap with somebody from Africa and not ask about the reward challenges, and again, just how things have changed so much, it seems. Your season is hands down famous, even for people who aren't fans of Africa. Almost anybody will say the best season for reward challenges. How they were handled, the rewards themselves specifically, and how interesting those were to watch. And I think this season, obviously in this episode, the whole ice cream thing, it's not like it's a huge reward or anything, but it's gone from the point, it almost seems like in Africa, that was when the turning point was, when they realized we can put people together in these and it can potentially change the game. Obviously Brandon and Frank, they were just automatically together, but I look at the Ethan and Lex thing and think about how that would play today, because now they just put entire groups on rewards together. So they're doing it at camp now, which almost seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it almost seems like the producer, they want now to stir up a bit of trouble, and they wanted that reaction that we got from Jason, where he's like, you guys can enjoy yourselves, and everybody's feeling uncomfortable. They want this for drama. All the way back in Africa, you took one person, but I have to ask, like, back then, even though we didn't see it, were those feelings of paranoia in there? Well, Ethan took Lex on this one, or Lex took, whoever. Was there that paranoia then? Was there still this stigmatism to, oh no, somebody gets to go on a reward, I don't know if I want that because I could miss out on something?
Oh yeah, I think that was always, even early on, the producers knew what they were doing with that. But as far as, you referenced Lex and Ethan, but they were so strong. They went together, but they were very, very strong. Anyway, and Big Tom, the three of them were so solid the whole game, really, really solid. But yeah, now, wait to see how people react when there's a reward right in front of you. Mm-hmm. That was great. I mean, different people are going to react different ways as far as people on the reward and then people that aren't on the reward. And I also wonder too, I wonder if they had planned this ice cream party before poor old Neil, they had to leave the game. Ice cream man did not even get to be part of the ice cream party.
Yeah, it's almost like a slap in the face now, but let's have it the day after you're voted out.
No, what's that about? Exactly. Poor guy.
They're going to start to do this every single season. They're just going to take the reward that would fit one person and just say, we're going to hold out and we're going to do this after you're gone just to mess with you a little bit.
Yeah, but, then you figure, shoot, Neil's out of the game, so, he can eat as much ice cream and everything else that he wants anyway, so.
How would you have felt if the episode after you were voted out, they decided to give away the fried chicken reward?
No, so guess what, Colin? The episode I was voted out, they killed another chicken the next day. Because we were talking about, doing the chicken. Should we do the chicken today? And they said, no, we'll do it tomorrow. And I thought, okay. I gotcha. I'm all over this. I know what's happening here. So I guess they figured I love chicken and I'd probably be trying to eat more than my share. So that didn't happen until the next day once T-Bird was ejected.
Do you think there's some outtake there of Big Tom turning the camera being, this one's for you, T-Bird, as he takes a big bite of it?
Yeah, something like that.
Couldn't put it past him. We'll go into the immunity challenge now. We talked a little bit about, how this set up the target on Ty and Sydney. I just want to get your theory on something, because it's not like I've read this theory a lot of places, but it was kind of a theory I had of my own, and I'm looking for an extra opinion on this. Sydney was so strong in that challenge. I think everybody knew she was going to be so strong going into these. And we already said, she's going to have a huge target on her regardless. If she's terrible in these challenges, everybody will think she's throwing it, because how would Sydney be terrible in a physical challenge? If she wins all these, she's going to be a target because, well, she's winning them all, and of course, look at her. The fact that it came down to her and Ty, and we never saw Sydney even flinch for the entire challenge. Meanwhile, Ty was just in agony the whole time. I'm thinking, did Sydney throw this at the end or something? It just seemed to come out of nowhere.
No, she's a competitor. Nope, I don't believe she did.
No chance.
Absolutely, 100% positively not. You get a lot of times what you can do to kind of mess up is sometimes you can stay in longer than you need to, and then people will say, wait a minute, watch out for Sydney, she's obvious, or for Ty, watch out for Ty. Now, Ty was no threat to go home either, or it didn't show that he was. Mm-hmm. But you get to a point, you got to figure, all these A-type, very competitive people, sometimes it's, you got to remember, hey, wait, I'm here for the long run. I'm here, but sometimes when you compete and you start competing, you just want to win. It's the competitive spirit. And Sydney's all about that too. No, I do not believe for a second she threw that. Absolutely not.
I would hope going forward though that she doesn't get targeted for just her physical game, because it would almost be a shame for somebody as smart as she is to go out just because, well, they are a competitor. I mean, this, like you said, this is what she does in her everyday life.
Yeah, but now I don't think we have to worry about that. We see she's a game player. She's playing this game, and she's playing hard. And Jason, I'm going to just say Jason sees that. That's what's going to hurt her now, her switching the alliances, because if she had stayed with Scott and Jason, you didn't hear anybody else saying, oh, Sydney's so strong, she's going to win this and that. Well, now you're probably going to hear you're going to hear Jason and, my mind's so blank. Jason and Scott talk about that now that she's jumped sides, meaning, hey, we got to watch her. Not only is she jumping alliances, she's strong. So, no, I don't think she'd be let go at this point because of her strength. If anything else, I think she's going to be let go because she's jumping alliances.
Mm-hmm. With Nick's, I think, the other guy who was probably viewed going in to be a huge physical threat. It's so interesting with his vote out this week because the editors were almost trying to tell us from the beginning of the season, we want you to root against this guy. But I'm not sure that's all there was to it. I mean, how did you feel about Nick this entire season?
God, I don't know. Unless I looked on the wrong thing, wasn't his, what do you call that? His emotional item? A picture of himself? Colin, what is up with that? Who does that? I mean, you could say, oh, that was just a big joke, or you can say, Nick, I don't know. I'm just wondering. But he was so overconfident that I think if you're a player out there and you see that and you're all out there struggling and you're paranoid and you see somebody like that in your face with it, you can be confident, but you don't want to do that toward the other people, with the other players. I think that's his personality. That's who he is, and that's why he got cast. So
it's almost unfortunate that we didn't get as much of him because he was kind of there in the first episode, and then he was gone for the entire season up until last week. Last week he came out of nowhere as this major player. It was almost hard to judge him, but what we did see of him the last 2 weeks, what did you think about the game that he was playing? Well, it's funny, all of a sudden, like you said, I didn't see much about him. And then last week I thought, okay, Nick's coming to life here. So I thought, we're going to see a really good player. I say a good player, meaning we're going to see him start to do some, use some good strategy. But, and I thought that with episode 7. But then with episode 8, with all the confidence he had and talking to Michelle and just, I don't know, again, that's a sure way to get yourself voted out. Oh, well, guess what? It did happen. Mm-hmm. Because nobody wants to see that. Nobody, if there's got to be a reason that you're standing out. And when you can't break up, for example, you can't break up Jason and Scott, they're solid. Debbie and Aubrey are already on the way out. I mean, there's certain people you look at and you think you can't turn. And then you see somebody like Nick that you see kind of wearing on everybody for different reasons. That's who you go for. It works. Do you think with the beauties, I mean, Nick definitely is part of that, but even with Michelle and Julia, do you think the fact that it took them so long to play the game, I think when they walked into Tribal, Jeff even said, pick up your torches, Nick and Michelle, like they've never even gone to Tribal before. Going that long without attending a Tribal Council, without having to play the game, does that hurt somebody? Well, I don't know if it hurts you, but you're probably more guarded than you should be. Because if you don't have anything else to compare it to, because look how many blindsides we've seen. Hadn't every week basically been a blindside? Mm-hmm. That if you've never been to Tribal Council and seen a blindside, then I guess you're not worried about it. So obviously, if Nick had been sitting in all these other Tribal Councils where, each week somebody was blindsided, he may be more like, hey, wait a minute, I guess this could happen. So definitely I definitely think it makes a difference to see what can actually happen. Of course, now Nick knows that, but because he hadn't been to another Tribal Council, I guess he didn't realize. It almost seems like Nick was doomed from the beginning in this game. It's funny how, we're talking about how Nick was playing such a smart game the last few weeks, but at the same time, every person who has interacted with him has had the same reaction. Yeah, there's somebody like Michelle and Julia are like, talking about, oh, he's condescending to us, I don't know about this, but then at the same time, they both admitted that he was their biggest ally in the game, which I found really surprising because I thought that Michelle and Julia were really tight back when they were aligned with Anna. And now we realized, no, they both were in it with Nick the whole time. So now, with what's happened with the vote turn, do you think, not Anna, Michelle and Julia have potentially lost themselves a jury vote with Nick? Because we didn't see it as much on screen, but from what they were telling us, they were tighter with Nick than what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same thing like again with Sydney, because she jumped alliances. I'm sure Nick's going to be saying the same thing. So you would think if somebody like Debbie or Aubrey or Ty are sitting there, well, Ty, of course, he doesn't know who Ty voted for. He got 5 votes. He's probably figuring it wasn't Scott or Jason. Yeah, but I think you definitely would be in danger of not getting his vote because you turned on him. So you could see that he might go for somebody, especially as confident and as cocky as the editing showed us about him. He may think, hey, I'd rather vote for Aubrey or Debbie or somebody that didn't turn on me than somebody that did.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think that could come into play, especially with a personality like Nick. I don't think Nick would look at it like, okay, who played the best game? All right, yeah, Julia turned on me, but she played the best game. I think it's going to always be personal with him,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he'd definitely jump over to somebody like Aubrey or Debbie if they're still sitting there at the end.
Aubrey has been a major player this season. You mentioned that you really liked her early on. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit on how you feel Aubrey's playing the game? Because her game's been up and down, too. We saw her in a position of power, and then we saw her completely at the bottom again. And it's not necessarily that she dug herself out of the hole this week. I think Sydney did more of it. But we also saw that Nick wanted to work with Aubrey. So I think that maybe Aubrey's social game seems to be improving from last week. How do you feel about her?
I love her. And Colin, the reason I can relate with her, I guess, because she always seems like, I think what she said, and her confessionals are great, by the way. They're fantastic. She's always got these little clever things she says. But, what she was saying is she just can't seem to get her head above water. But she's not giving up. I mean, a lot of times you see people kind of give into it and just feel like, well, this is it, my time's up. She never seems to give up. If she has been on the bottom, it seems like so many times, and I guess it reminds me of the way I felt in Africa, where I felt like every week I had to do something different to stay in another 3 days. It seems like nothing was easy. So I guess maybe I can relate to her character. And I love that she, never say die, never give up, always working it, always, pointing things out to people like she was pointing out at tribal council. I love her. I think she's great. I don't know that she can stay in the game till the end. I hope I'm wrong. They may end up forgetting about her, but she's definitely somebody to watch out for because she's not going to sit back. She's going to make things happen.
It's interesting you mentioned the comparison to how you played in Africa, because I've always looked at your game in Africa as like the original scrapper. That's what you were. We now have this almost every single season, but we didn't have it in Borneo or Australian Outback, but just the player who just always finds a way to stick around another week, who's always trying. Even if the plans don't work out in the end, you had a different plan every week, and you're always fighting. And the funny thing is, I don't think I really noticed Aubrey that much until she was on the bottom. And now I'm finding that every single week I'm enjoying her more and more, and it probably is just because she is that character now that it's like the audience is almost being told, we want you to get behind her. She's the underdog now, and just watch what she can do.
Yeah, she definitely is, but so is Debbie. But I think from the beginning, Aubrey, I just didn't see her character, so she's kind of evolved each week into, she's an amazing player, and again, never giving up, fighting every week, and Debbie the same way. But Aubrey, I love them both. It's funny, out of the 3 tribes, I've really kind of gravitated more to the Brains tribe, Colin.
Oh,
and
yeah, I completely agree.
I love the personalities and everything. So, I love the players. They're very interesting, fascinating characters. And also, the way they played has been, I guess I probably thought, okay, we got the Brains tribe, blah, blah, how will they do, just the characters are fantastic. I love them.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're looking at a returning player season, I mean, it's almost gotten to the point now where every player's voted out. It's that speculation, can they come back or not? But if we're looking at this season, the Brains, the Bronze, the Beauties, I think that easily almost every single Brain is a potential returning player. Maybe not Neil just because we didn't really see anything of him, but like Peter, that's a huge character, for better or worse. Liz was a big character. Aubrey, even Joe, when he goes into his FBI mode. I mean, the Brains Tribe is just full of all the fun characters this season, and I think that's really what's making this a more entertaining season for me than we've seen in a while.
I absolutely 100% agree with you. I love it. Love the Brains Tribe. And I guess probably because maybe I didn't expect them to be as colorful as they're going to be because they're the Brains.
Yeah.
But they are great players, great characters, and to see them just, I don't know, it's just, I've really, really, really enjoyed that tribe.
We've covered... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would love to see a Brains pull it out and win.
Yeah, they're the ones I'm rooting for, too. I mean, we've covered all of the different characters and all the storylines from this episode, but just curious about one thing. This whole Brains, Brawn, Beauty thing, going into the season, it didn't seem like the tribes were as clearly defined as they were the first time around. Tony and Trish, and then the Brains with Spencer and Cass and Tasha and everything. But at the same time, it almost seems like there's more loyalty between these groups. I mean, even this episode coming in, you would have thought the whole merge was about shaking things up, and the tribe swap would be about shaking things up, but these people always seem to be gravitating back towards their original alliances, even if they do flip. Do you think that this is a potential season where we do have an all-Brains alliance make it to the end, or the Beauties stick together, or the Bronze stick together from this point to the end?
I think if anybody sticks together, we got a better chance of seeing the Brains do it. Because it seems like they're not, turning on each other. I mean, again, I see Scott and Jason, the two Bronze, they seem tight as, thick as thieves. Sydney's on the outskirts of that now. All right, and then with the Beauty, of course, now we've got, what do we have? We have Michelle, and we've got Julia, and Ty. And Ty Julia looks like, from just what I've seen, she's going back and forth and over and out and everywhere. She's not sure what she wants to do. And it's kind of another thing that Aubrey said that was so cute was that Aubrey, what did she say? Something about Aubrey's kind of Julia's middle of the road. And I think she said something like, when you're in the middle of the road, you're bound to get, run over or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I remember something about that, yeah.
So, you're stay in the middle of the road, you're bound to get run over. I'm telling you, her confessionals are fantastic. Aubrey's confessionals are great. So, I see Michelle, I think I see Julia trying to go, stay loyal with Scott and Jason. I see Michelle at this point. I don't think Michelle can be, Julia's very, very young. So I can see her trying to feel maybe a little comfortable with Scott and Jason. Now, Michelle, I don't think she's going to be pushed around by two guys. I think she had a little bit of that with Nick, and she's had enough. I think I can see her moving over with the Beauty. Mm-hmm. Maybe not with the Beauty, moving over with the Brains, and having a relationship maybe with Joe and feeling, that she can be respected with Joe as opposed to Jason and Scott. So I kind of see that. I still think the Brains have not done anything to each other to not make them want to come back and be together. Yeah. I can see them pulling people in closer to them.
And yet they seem like the dysfunctional tribe at the beginning of the season almost.
Yes, they did. Absolutely. They absolutely did. These other tribes did seem like they had it together. Well, Beauty, I didn't really get a great vibe from Beauty. I did from from the Braun. They seem like they were, well, I don't know. Now that I think about that, I'm thinking about all these characters that along the way. But the Braves definitely looked like the mismatch. They weren't getting along. It seems like there was just, but I think that they're going to come through it at the end and have more brain stinging than anything. We'll see.
There's two more things I want to cover just before we wrap things up here. But the first thing I want to talk about, there's been so much talk about it in this season, but no real indication that anything's going to happen. So I'm just curious if you really think this Super Idol is something that could play out, and if it does, how do you think it will play out?
I don't know. It's going to be kind of disappointing. I'm sure the producers are wanting it to happen. But, you know, it's funny. It's kind of, these Super Idols have kind of gotten lost with me. I don't really, meaning I hadn't put much stock into them because I don't know, I can't remember who's got them, where they are. Did somebody leave with one? Oh, yeah, Neil left with one.
Yeah.
I think Aubrey called him something special name for that. Anyway, so, you know what's funny? I hope that we see something with the Super Idol. For right now, I've lost interest in it because I can't really figure out what could happen. I hadn't really given it much thought. What do you think?
Well, I mean, really, this is multiple seasons where we've had these big advantages that don't play out. Even on the first Brains versus Brawn versus Beauty, Tony had his Super Idol that never really got played. You know, he found a way to use to his advantage, and I think even if the amount is being mentioned on the show, even if it doesn't get played, and I'm not entirely convinced that Scott could convince Ty and Jason to work together to use the Super Idol, I think the threat of it being there makes it a little bit more interesting, because what I'm waiting to see is now that Ty has kind of had this blunder where he, you know, outed this Super Idol that's out there, for whoever doesn't know, people are immediately going to be picking off somebody if they have an idol. It's like, well, if you have one idol and there's a chance that this idol can become a Super Idol, I want to get rid of you while I can. So it could even just end up being that everybody with an idol becomes the biggest target now.
Right. Exactly. So I'm just, you know, again, I think it's a great concept if it were to happen. Who all has the Super Idols now? Jason has one.
And
Ty has one. Neil has one while he's over in.
And then,
Neil.
Who knows, maybe that one's been reburied. We don't know. But, of course, we haven't heard of it in this entire episode.
Right. All right, so who else has one?
Oh, that would be it. There was one for each tribe.
So there's only two.
Yeah, there's two that we know for sure in the game right now.
Okay, so yeah, I'm afraid those are gonna fizzle out.
Yeah, they'll just keep trying. Like we had the advantage that Dan had in Worlds Apart. I mean, there's always something that they're throwing in there that even if it doesn't play out, they try something new every year. It'd almost be nice if they just stuck with a concept and just waited for somebody to play it.
Well, Colin, let me ask you a question. I should know this, but maybe I don't. Can you use half of it to save yourself, or no, you have to put it with somebody else?
It has to be combined, yeah, but then that would allow you to play it after the votes are read.
Okay.
So really,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it gets more complicated, because Scott is aligned with Jason and he's aligned with Ty, but in order for this to work, they would have to combine it and then one of those three use it, and I just don't know whether Ty and Jason will ever agree to something like that. Like, when it gets this deep in the game, let's say you're out there. You're this deep in the game, you have an idol, somebody else has an idol. Do you ever risk combining it to use it if it's not on yourself?
But you can't use it on yourself, right?
Well, I think you could. I think that if you combine the two idols, again, we won't know until we see it, but I think the idea is that if you have two idols, you basically play two idols at once, and then that allows whoever plays it to play it after the vote.
So, Colin, so let's say this. You have an idol, you have half an idol, I have half an idol.
Mm-hmm.
Then the vote's read. And Colin's getting ding-dong ditched. You know how I like my ding-dong
Yeah.
ditched. Colin's getting ding-dong ditched. So at this point, you could say, hey, T-Bird, hey, can I have half your idol? And I'd be like, absolutely. But then wait, that I've given you the idol. Now, we don't know. Maybe I was second in line to go.
Yeah.
So no, see, guess what, Colin? I hate it, but you've been ding-dong ditched. I can't help it.
Yeah, it's just, it's too much of a risk, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, so forget it. So I love the concept. I think it's great. And now that there's only 2 idols that we think, and I've heard that Neil did come home with his idol, because I'm sure everybody's, listened to his, different interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
So now knowing there's 2 idols, and Ty just voted for Jason, that's confusing because they're the only 2 that could have done something special, and he voted, the only one that voted against it. I don't know what, Ty's playing a different game. I don't know what game Ty's playing, but guess what? I don't care because I love it.
And I want to see something happen with the Super Idol, even if it is the theory that you threw out there. Like, let's say Ty and Jason do combine it, and then they play it on Ty, and then Jason ends up with the one with the next amount of votes. Like, anything to just make this whole thing into chaos. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I hope it does happen. I'm thinking my bet is that it's gonna fizzle out, but I hope I'm wrong. And if it does fizzle out, Colin, you know what's gonna happen when they do the next season. They're gonna do something to think, okay, that didn't work out. What can we do to kind of, and that's the beauty of the game because it keeps changing and evolving each season. Love it.
We can't really do any recap on the season without talking about the conditions out there in Cambodia. And of course, we know this season was filmed before Second Chances, which you would have been on. If the public had voted properly, thank you. But
Colin, I was just about over it till you mentioned it.
Yeah, sorry, I dug up a bad memory for you. My apologies. This will be the last time you recap on this show.
That's okay. I was ding-dong ditched.
Yeah. Ding-dong ditched by CBS and the American public. One or the other.
No, it's not the American public. You got to believe that.
Yeah.
You got to believe it. I don't want to believe it, but it'd be easier to blame, to say it went the other way, but no.
Well, I don't know how in touch you've been with some of the players who were out there or what you know, because it's almost more fascinating to me to see that we watched Second Chances where we didn't see these medevacs and we didn't see these infections and these people passing out in challenges and everything. But we know that season was filmed second, so it almost is like this weird question, did something go really wrong in Kaoh Rong when they were filming where they found a way to correct it in Cambodia? Like, did you hear anything from the contestants out there that even if there were rumors, oh yeah, the previous season was too harsh, so they're taking it easy on us?
That's so funny. Did something go wrong in Kaoh Rong? That was cute, Colin.
I didn't even notice that.
Did something go wrong in Kaoh? Hey, I know, I like that. You don't ever usually hear me say, if I haven't said Kaoh Rong one time, because every time I try to say it, I know I say it different every time I say it, so I don't even say it. Anyway, but yes, I guarantee you, I feel quite sure when they took the superstars out there on Second Chances, they thought, okay, we're going to have to do something a little differently because they were dropping like flies in the one we just did. So, yeah, I'm sure it was a concern that they were, paying attention to all that.
Which environment do you think is tougher? I talked a little bit about Diane last week about, all these infections and everything. And, obviously if anybody was really hit by the conditions in Africa, Diane was one of them. Lex would be another. But one thing that she said was very different was that the dry heat in Africa wouldn't have allowed for the infections and everything. But overall, which environment do you really think is harsher? Because I think at this point it's these 2 seasons and then maybe Guatemala, and those are the ones that are considered like the harshest seasons.
Gosh, I guess I think of the seasons that had the rain, all the rain. That seems to be the, emotionally, you would be really beaten down with that. Even a little more than the heat, if that makes sense, Colin, because you're laying around a lot every day. That's the number one thing that you'll hear people say, you are bored, stupid every day, laying around. But if you're laying around in your, just out of the heat under your hut or under your, whatever your shelter is, where if it's raining, that is just mentally, that will defeat you right there. So I'd say the rainy seasons are the ones that would be the worst.
That would be, Nicaragua would be one of those. Nicaragua caused 2 people to quit in 1 week just because of the rain not stopping and the cold. Yeah.
Exactly. So that to me would be the worst the absolute worst environment to be in. Only because you're already mentally defeated. This game will tear you, break you down, tear you down emotionally and mentally in a minute. You factor in that kind of weather and that kind of environment that you're already the stress you're under, definitely.
Well, we're going to move into our final 5 questions here, which you did answer in episode 3. So I'll remind you as we go along as to what your answers were after you answer this time, just to see how close you are now in this season, or how well you've done so far. So let's start out with right now, after episode 8, who is your tip to win Survivor Kaoh?
Oh, God. My tip to win. I should have thought about these.
You've done this before.
I know. You would think. All right. Okay. To win. All right. I'm going to stay away from the from the strong personalities. I'm going to stay away from Jason and Scott on this one. Unless Scott can get away from Jason here really quickly. Debbie, I think we're going to see Debbie out sooner than later. I think she's too much of a player. Ty, I think Ty, nobody's going to be sitting with Ty. I'm going to say Michelle.
That's interesting because when we asked you in episode 3, you originally answered Anna and then quickly corrected yourself, and you saved yourself on that, and you answered Michelle in the end. So you're sticking with Michelle.
Colin, score! Hey.
And if she wins, you look like the more brilliant than any of us who are writing power rankings every week and have no clue what we're doing.
Well, I don't even have to come back for that. If I happen to pick the right one, I'm only picking Michelle now because she seems so low-key, so laid back, and just I think she's just going to kind of skate in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, good, Michelle, that was great, okay?
All right, good. Now let's go for number 2. Who would be your dark horse? Who's the person, maybe not a front runner, but you think could slip in there?
Jason.
Okay, well, in episode 3 you answered Julia, but I'm actually feeling more confident about Jason than Julia at this point, so good choice.
All right.
Who would be your choice for the next person to go?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Not Ty. Oh, gosh. Wow. I don't know that I really. I have to answer this.
That's right. It's the law. You have to answer. Survivor Oz demands it.
I'm going to go with Sydney. I don't know that I really believe that, but I think that Jason and Scott are going to be really, really upset that Sydney turned on them. That I think that they might try to pull in Michelle, even though Michelle turned on them too. Sydney was their original. Mm-hmm. And I think, okay, I'm going with Sydney.
I hope you're wrong just because Sydney's probably my favorite on this season, but you've also done a pretty good job of convincing me about how big of a threat she's going to be in this episode, but I'm going to hope you're wrong on that one.
I'm wrong too, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the next question you answered before, and I'm assuming your answer won't change, but between Brains, Brawn, and Beauty, which tribe would you be playing on if you were on this season?
I think I remember saying this because I remember what I said when I said it, Colin. I said the brain, but not because I'm a brain. Just because I am fascinated and I like the personalities out there. I would have been just, loved to be among that group, but not because I really didn't fit any 3 of the categories. So I kind of like odd. They'd have to make a 4th category for me, and I'm not even sure which category that would be. So I'm going to say I would have loved to have been part of the Brains group.
They could make it like Brains versus Bronze versus Second Chance Should-Have-Beens, something like that.
All right, Colin. Okay.
I'm going to play a game with you here that I played the last couple weeks, which is we're on a Brains versus Brawn versus Beauty season. In Africa, my all-time favorite season. What I want, if you're willing or if you can come up with the answers here, give me who you would cast as the ultimate in each of these categories. So from Africa, who would you view as the ultimate brain, the ultimate brawn, and the ultimate beauty?
Oh, God. All right. Oh God.
I will
okay,
let
wait.
you know that Diane answered this question, so I'm going to compare your answers.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
I won't.
All right. So okay. Look, I'm making notes. Rain, Braun, Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, who am I picking for Brain? All right. Hold on. I gotta think now. I gotta think. All right. I gotta think back on all. You know, there were how many of us there were. All right. I'm gonna jump around here. Braun, I'm gonna go with Silas.
Okay.
But let me think, because I may change up things as I go, but I don't think I will. Okay. Beauty. All right, I'm trying to think the girls. Okay. Linda. God, that's tough. Oh, gosh. I've got a couple of answers on this one. Beauty. Oh, gosh. You know, Lindsay, Little Kim, and Kelly.
All three of them.
No, wait, and then Jessie. Oh, my gosh. Oh, and they're all beautiful in different ways. Don't you hate it when people answer like this? I do. Oh, please.
I hate it more when there's so many beautiful people and you just can't pick one.
Okay, I'm gonna say, God, you know, Lindsay, they're all okay. Lindsay, Little Kim, Kelly Goldsmith, Kelly G, and Jessie were all very cute, attractive girls, period. Just, even out there, they were a hot mess. They still looked good, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, though, who I saw the first time I saw her. I remember seeing her before the game started, and I looked at her, and I remember I said, she is beautiful. It was Jessie.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what most fans vote for, too.
I'm going to have to say it's cute, and as the other three were, Jessie has a very natural, just like a wow, she's beautiful. So I'm going to go with Jessie. Finally, I bet you won't ask me that question again.
Yeah. Well, we still have to get one more. You have to pick the brains now. Unless you're the ultimate, you can pick yourself as the ultimate brains.
That ain't gonna happen. All right, Colin, that is not gonna happen. Not in this lifetime. All right, I'm gonna have to say, I'm gonna probably say, oh gosh, now here we go. Lex is incredibly intelligent. Linda Spencer is incredibly intelligent. Carl, Dr. B, is a dentist. Quite intelligent. I'm gonna, again, there's three of them. And I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out because I'm not thinking. I'm gonna go with Lex. I think overall intelligence, even though I think Linda Spencer and Dr. B also, I'm gonna say final answer Lex.
Lex. All right, now I'm going to let you know what Diane answered last week.
Okay.
So,
did I get the same? Did we get any of the same? I bet we did.
You did. Your brains are exactly the same. She answered Lex for brains as well.
Okay.
Her brawn was Big Tom, which I told her Big Tom's going to be so disappointed he wasn't picked as the beauty, but I'm sure he'll take the brawn. He fits the category a little bit more. And
beauty?
The beauty, you picked Jessie. Last week, Diane picked you as the ultimate beauty from the season.
Oh, Lady Di. Oh, that's so sweet. Aw.
There
That
you
makes
go.
me smile, Colin.
You gonna add Diane as your secondary pick now to beauty?
That's so sweet. Oh, well, she's obviously the most intellectual. She's the brain.
Yeah.
Right? Come on.
That's the most brilliant answer I've had in the 3 weeks we've been doing this segment on here.
That was very, very sweet.
Now, we do have one more official question to ask, and let's just see if you matched up with what you said earlier in the season. Which player on this season is playing most like you?
Oh, Aubrey.
Aubrey. Last time you answered Michelle, but I think between the two of them, Aubrey's probably a better answer at this point.
Yeah, you know, I want to say Aubrey, although, you know, her being on the brain tribe, she's so clever, and I wasn't clever. I like that. So, unfortunately, not the clever part, but I love that she never say die, work the angle, whatever you got to do, you know, just stay in another 3 days.
The original scrapper, as I coined it, T-Bird, has just picked Aubrey as the new scrapper, and I think it fits.
The original scrapper. I guess I'll take that. I kind of like Lady Di's compliment better than yours calling me the original scrapper.
Yeah.
But hey, I'll take it, Colin. I'll take it.
The original scrapper / ultimate beauty of Survivor Africa.
All right, I'll take it.
That's pretty much it for this episode of Kaoh Rong, but there is one thing we wanted to cover, and this is if anybody out there is listening, it involves the upcoming season, the 33-34 cycle. So if you don't want to be spoiled on anything, we're not going to give away any major spoilers here, but if you don't want to be spoiled, then just tune out now or fast forward a few seconds, or probably better tune out because who knows whether it'll take more than a few seconds or not. But it has come out in some sources this week that there will be tune out now, just more so people don't say we're spoiling stuff. All right, so it has come out that there will be a potential full all-star season coming up, and there is a list of names that is on there. I think there's probably about 20, maybe 25 names on there right now. There's supposedly more that hasn't been leaked. And this is for players who are in the mix or being asked right now about being on the upcoming season. And there are some exciting names on there. I don't know if you wanted to go into any of the people specifically that you'd like to see on there. We should say, sadly, CBS has ding-dong ditched you again because you're not on the list. What's wrong with that?
I've been ding-dong ditched again, Colin.
There's something wrong here. Like, this is becoming repetitive with the show.
You know, Colin, it's funny. You know, I don't know. I mean, I know they're great at the casting. They're great at what they're doing. They've got great people on that list. I don't even know what to say about it. I got nothing.
I will say when we first found out about this, it was probably just before we recorded our Oztopsy, which is the episode recorded, I don't know, maybe on Friday or something like that. And Noah, who was recording it with me, he shared the list with me before we started. And both of us had the exact same opinion, was that we were very shocked you weren't on there, because I don't know if you're even aware of this, but there were a lot of rumors floating around on the internet before Second Chances aired, or I guess after it started filming, that CBS was very unhappy, or the producers or somebody was very unhappy that you didn't make the cut, that they were going to remove somebody and put you in there. So, I mean, there are these rumors on the internet that you're popular enough with the higher-ups that they wanted you on the show, and we were both just absolutely shocked that you wouldn't be on there, because I think coming out of Second Chances, again, I don't know how much you keep up with fan response and everything, your name is the one that was always floated around as how did she not make it on that season?
God, I know, Colin, you know, you can kind of buy into that a little bit. Like, I hear it, and I'm like, and I love it, because I love to hear it. But then when it comes out, and you know they're doing, or you hear that they're doing repeat players, and then you're not contacted to go, it's like, oh, you really can't buy into what you heard the last year, because you're thinking, okay, if they were that disappointed you weren't out there, they could have contacted you. So, I don't know. I guess right now, hey, I still never say die, Colin. So I'm thinking, you know, I know there's not that many people it doesn't look like from the first 10 seasons. Seems like there was only a couple on the list that I saw. I'm trying to think, were there any females? Were there any females from the first 10 so far that have been shown out there, Colin?
I'm just looking at it right now. Again, if people don't want this part spoiled, tune out. I think the closest is actually season 11, Danny Boatwright. Yeah, I don't see... So nobody else even close... Or Sandra, I guess, counts, because she is on the list. So Sandra and Danny Boatwright are the only ones, even from those first 11 seasons, that are included on here.
Yeah, and they're winners.
Mm-hmm.
So they're winners. So I guess it doesn't seem quite as bad, because I know there's not anybody really from the early seasons except for Danny and Sandra, and they're winners. So maybe, you know, what they're looking at doing is bringing it back, because it looks like there's a few winners on that list.
Mm-hmm.
I did get to see Sabrina and who was on there? I'm trying to think from Second Chances. Sabrina and...
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it now. I know there was another one. Carolyn is on there.
Carolyn, yeah. And you know what's funny? I'm really happy for them. I'm happy for everybody that's on there, of course. I'm especially happy for the ones, you know, the second chancers that didn't make the second chance, because I know how disappointed, and I say that, like it's really low key. But we were so disappointed that to see that they might get to go back after being so disappointed a year ago. I'm happy for them. I'm glad for them.
I'm just going to say it now, and again, maybe it is just being like the ultimate Africa fan, and for 15 years just dying to have almost that entire cast back. Like, I would make an argument that you could bring back Jesse, you could bring back Carl, and it would still make for great TV. Like everybody, Linda, all the early boots, yourself. But I think the fact that coming out of Second Chances, there was such huge support for you, and fans really want to have you on it. I honestly believe that at some point you will be back on there. And here we're looking at now doing another all returning players season. It almost seems to be back in the swing of things about having returning players on quite a bit again. There's going to be plenty of opportunities coming up, and I know I am almost 100% sure we will have you on again. And that's coming from the biggest Africa fan and the host of this show in Bed's absence.
Oh, I love your optimism. Thank you for that.
I have been saying this for 15 years, and last year I was almost proven right, so I believe it will happen.
Thank you for that. Well, I'm not giving up hope. Absolutely. And again, I look at it like, I wasn't part of the mix they wanted this time. That's okay. I was happy that they brought me back for Second Chances 14 years after the fact. I thought, well, just to be mentioned with all the players that I got to be, in the running with was quite a compliment. So it's just enough to encourage me that I've got to go back.
And it will happen. And I am absolutely thrilled you were able to fit this into your schedule. I'm going to say it, I've said it several times on the show, but Ben's job is a lot harder than I think any of us gave him credit for. It's hard to line these things up, and you were right there agreeing to do it, even though you come on earlier this season. And on top of that, huge busy week for you, huge busy week for myself as well. You have something big coming up, and I have something big coming up. I've got a baby coming in a few weeks, so you found a way to fit this into the schedule, and you made a 15-year lifelong dream of mine come true to be able to talk to T-Bird.
Oh, Colin, you can talk to me anytime. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations to you and Jamie on your baby that's going to be born in 2 weeks. I'm thrilled. Your life will be changed. You will be, you'll know what God's blessings truly are once you have a little one. It's a miracle. And I know I asked you earlier if you and Jamie were going to name the baby Colin Jr. To that, I think you said you didn't think so, but you were going to go with a name you thought with a C.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just give you the suggestion. Why don't we name baby Cooper?
Cooper, yes.
Hey, that's a cool name, Colin.
That is.
People name their children now like Cooper. That is like the coolest name. So I'm throwing it out there, baby Cooper.
And I might just take you up on that. My brother, he had twins a couple of years ago, and one of their names is Teresa. And, of course, I'm having a boy, so there was no way to fit that in. I was thinking T-Bird Hilding doesn't quite work. Cooper is now in the running. I'm putting it in there.
Cooper's such a cool name. All right, that'd be great. All right, so listen, keep me posted and let me know how it's going, and let me know what you named him, and just enjoy every minute of it.
Absolutely, we will. And thanks so much for being on here, and good luck with your upcoming week as well.
Thank you very much. And I would love to have your listeners follow me at T-Bird Cooper. Any comments they want to send, I'd love to answer any questions they've got anytime.
And we'll hopefully have you back on here many times in the future, and possibly on when Michelle wins and you could be proven right, or when any other people win.
That sounds great. Colin, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and congratulations again on baby Cooper. Baby Colin Jr.
Yeah. I know we say this every single week, but huge thanks to Teresa T-Bird Cooper for coming on the show again after appearing in episode 3 earlier this season. And there's certain guests where it doesn't matter how many. We could have her on every single week and it would be fantastic every single time. So big thanks to her for appearing. And in case anybody is wondering, we will have another recap next week. We're going to aim for 4 in a row. And I don't have a finalized guest at this moment to the time that the episode's going up. But we are hoping maybe this week we'll have enough time so we could get some fan questions in there. We're still nailing down exactly who's going to be doing it, but we'll get it out as soon as we know for sure. And in the meantime, as always, we have the Oztopsy, which should be going up Thursday or Friday. I don't know, whenever we can get around to recording it. The Ozlet show this week, I don't know who's hosting, but we're still putting it out there. We did have a couple of weeks ago, a fan came on the show and recorded the Ozlet episode with us and with all the other Ozlets who were on that week, and that offer's still out there. We may have somebody this week or the next week, but that offer is open to any of the fans listening who actually want to come on. You can come on and spend 10 minutes if you want, only talking with us, or you could spend the entire episode, whatever does work out for the scheduling. We'd love to have fans on to talk about these episodes with us. And other than that, the Reality Rally stuff should be coming out very soon. Ben was there fresh off of his reward challenge from Survivor Australia, which also has a new host, which you could read about. Hopefully we'll have something on the site pretty soon, analyzing the new host of Australian Survivor. And with the Reality Rally stuff, Ben's just finished up with that at the time we recorded this, and hopefully we'll be getting some pictures, some videos, some interviews on the site that he did conduct over the time there, so watch out for all that. And in the meantime, as always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on iTunes, send us messages, send us hate mail, send us whatever you want. Give us your thoughts on all these episodes, and until next time, we will speak to you on the train.